Take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So yesterday on the 25th, the Young Turks did an interview with this character, Lindy Li, who was a former fundraiser for the DNC and the Democratic Party, and then switched sides and has now become a proponent of MAGA. And there's more to her story, and I'll dig into that a little bit later. Generally, the consensus on this woman is that she's not a good faith actor or just not worth paying very much attention to. She's pretty clearly a grifter, just off of the basis of her behavior, doing what she did, switching sides like that. And she has her reasons, and she talks about it in ways that I do think bring up interesting issues about corruption in the Democratic Party. And Cenk and Anna do a decent job of pointing out the fact that, well, she responded to corruption in the Democratic Party by switching to the Republican Party and doing the same thing for them, essentially being an operative and a fundraiser for them, as though there's not corruption that goes on within the GOP. And she also kind of hand waves when it comes to the GOP and says, well, I don't really know about how things go on within the Republican Party. I just know how things go on within the Democratic Party. And that's probably true to the extent that she is not as ingrained in the Republican Party as she was in the Democratic Party. But also, she's an operative. She has switched sides. So she does have a sense of how things operate within that side of the political world. And that's part of what she's talking about in this interview. So she doesn't come off super dislikable. I'll give her that. She comes off relatively normal, but if you really think about what she's saying and put the pieces together, that the math doesn't really add up. And so she has some valid points about the Democratic Party. She has some valid points in terms of just her experience that make sense why somebody would be turned away from a Democratic fundraising or from organizing. And I've talked to plenty of people who feel exactly the same way, but their response was not to join the Republican Party and start propping up MAGA. So I want to talk about this lady. I want to talk about what Cenk and Anna thought they were doing by interviewing her and how ultimately it was a misguided choice, but fits neatly into their own sort of flirting with the idea of left the left. They insist that's not what they're doing in terms of this pivot to in their mind, a more moderate audience. In a lot of people's minds, they're just trying to pivot towards a MAGA audience. But here they are interviewing a real left the left grifter. 100% that is what this woman is doing. And we'll talk a little bit about the reasons why and what exactly her play is. But if they themselves, as of now, are not doing a left-the-left grift, they're certainly gathering information from the people who have. So let me play a couple clips here and then we'll talk about it.
And one thing that I've never said before is something that happened to me over the course of this past decade. I was put on birth control in 2018 because of health issues, and it completely upended my life.
How so?
I really never said this before, but it's really had such a traumatic and tremendous impact on my thinking. I feel like I wasted 5 years of my life because I was on birth control. And when I decided to come off it in May 2023, I felt like I reclaimed my life and realized that conservatives were right about birth control. It completely hijacks your hormones. It makes you extremely anxious. And I would just expect it to just take it without question. I tried to express my concerns to my doctor, but she was living in this liberal ideology where you could just medicate yourself to recovery. But now that I've been off it for 2 years, I feel like I'm a new woman. I finally have full control over my mind. And I'm finally free to be who I am without being shackled.
So Lindy,
So in this first clip, she mentions, and I just wanted to highlight this because I think it's interesting, and I think it illustrates a little bit of this person's background, and kind of what exactly are we talking about here. She mentions that birth control, that she was put on birth control by supposedly a liberal doctor, and that caused her all kinds of hormonal troubles and stuff. And I mean, she seems to kind of tie that in with the fact that she was going along with Democratic Party politics, or she kind of hints that getting off of birth control is when she made this political turn, because all of a sudden she sees clearly, which is just odd. That's an odd claim. I've never heard somebody connect birth control to their political beliefs in that way. And Anna Kasparian, you know, to her credit, calls her out on this, and they both do a decent job at like trying to follow up with her and ask her questions throughout this interview. I don't really think they got to the bottom of it, and I think that's part of the problem. I don't really know if there is a bottom to this person. I mean, she seems a little bit empty in some way. And I recognize that's a mean thing to say about a person, you know, despite the, obviously, she's politically atrocious in many ways, but also there just seems like, I don't know, something's a little off here, because she speaks very coherently and in some cases thoughtfully. In some cases she says things that I agree with on a moral level. But then it's like when you put all the pieces together of like what this person's doing and what her reasons for it are, it just doesn't really add up. And you can see Cenk and Anna wrestling with that in real time. And so this claim about birth control and how it messed up her hormones, I mean, I'm not going to say that that's not true. And I wouldn't even say that wouldn't have an effect on somebody's politics. I guess it might, especially if your world is interacting with politics and donors and political parties all the time. Then I guess some kind of medication that destabilizes you hormonally could have an effect on that. I think your average person that's just living their life isn't going to feel like their political beliefs change because of birth control or any other medication. I'm sure there's some cases of that, but I don't know. That's just not something I've ever really heard before, and it's a little odd. It seems to be for her an indication of some kind of political conspiracy, or this was the first chip in the armor of her belief in democratic anything, any type of democratic policies or liberal social policy, that sort of thing. And so she gets into that later in the interview about how, I mean, really this lady is just a conservative. And so the question mark here is not why are you helping MAGA? She makes it very clear that she pretty much just agrees with MAGA. But the question is, why were you ever working in Democratic Party politics in the first place? And I think that is an indication that there is something weird and creepy going on there, especially in terms of donors. And so we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a problem being pointed out here that nobody in the room seems to really put their finger on, which is the type of people that get sucked into fundraising for Democratic Party politics in the first place. So let me play this next clip real quick.
First, I want to say once and for all that I wasn't paid a single dime. People say that I was a consultant or, you know, I was just grifting off the Democratic Party. I'm a donor. I give. I raise money and I give. I do not take. I haven't been paid a single dime. I did get like care packages with like cookies and stuff. I guess if you count that as payment, then fine. I don't even eat cookies. I gave them away. Yeah. So I'm just sick and tired of the blatant hypocrisy, the excommunication tactics, the fact that you can't ask any questions. I tried to reform the party from within, but they wouldn't have it. They banned me. The first moment, like within a week of me asking questions, I was taken off all the lists. And at that time, I was just asking questions. I wasn't even criticizing. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't even hear it. So Lindy, it was just unbelievable that they were so quick to ostracize me just for raising questions after I raised millions for them, after I organized, after I gave everything. I gave everything I had to the party. But even over this past year, my mind was starting to change. I just didn't want anything to do with much, a lot of their policies.
So here she says two interesting things. The first thing she said was that she never got paid at all for doing this. I flat out do not believe that. That absolutely does not pass the smell test. 1 second before that, she was saying that she gives her all to this party, and that this is all she's done with her life, and that it's everything. She's poured everything into it. You're telling me that she did that without ever making a dime, that there was no financial security that she found through doing this? And then she illustrates that this is very much a pay-to-play scheme, and that basically the way it works is the more you donate, the more access you have. Pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. She says in this interview that at one point Democrats were talking about that and making that clear, because she, as somebody who was fundraising, would have to set out these terms for other donors. Hey, if you pay this much, you can, talk to this person. If you pay this much, you can talk directly to Kamala Harris, etc. So that's how political corruption works. We all know this. And I think that there is some value to what this woman's saying, because she's pointing that out. But then obviously going to the right wing makes no sense, as though there's less corruption on the right wing side. That's just obviously ridiculous. Again, to Cenk's credit, he does point that out. But then the other thing that she says here is that within the Democratic Party, if you question them or criticize them at all, you would immediately be excommunicated. And she said even before she got to the point where she was criticizing any policy, where she was just asking questions lightly, or she said that, even bringing up the question of Biden's age or competence was a total non-starter, and that was like cause for excommunication. And she says that is what happened. But then a couple seconds later, she says that she had already, by the time she really left the Democratic Party, had been realizing for like a year that she doesn't agree with any of their positions. And she says a minute later that the reason she is on board with MAGA, Cenk asks her, okay, you don't want to raise money for Democrats anymore. Why raise money for the right? What political affiliation do you have with them? Or, agreement do you have with them? She says she agrees with them on every issue. And so, right there, that's the answer to the question. Before, she said her only issue that was most important to her was the environment. And that's why she was associated with Democrats. And she gave it her all, and she was passionate, and she gave everything to the party. But then she switches to MAGA because she agrees with them on every other position except the environment, except the environment is supposed to be her number one issue. So this is not a person who has a coherent political belief at all. She just doesn't. She has none. And Cenk and Anna do seem to be catching on to that a little bit in this interview. They seem to be trying to prompt her in a way to say, what is it that you politically believe? And if you have things that you politically believe, why would you give money to Republicans and raise money for Republicans, given that you supposedly feel politically homeless? This woman is not politically homeless. She's on the right. It's obvious. The only thing that she complains about on the right, shockingly, is that they're incredibly racist to her because she's Asian, she's Chinese. So obviously that raises a lot of eyebrows. And then they use the DEI argument against her and say, oh, why are you jumping the line? And so, when you say you agree, she said she agrees with Republicans on all social issues. So, that is specifically what she's talking about. That is the Republican position, is that, there should be no minorities who are hired ahead of white people. White people should be the first in line, because that's how things always have been in America, and trying to correct those trends is immoral. That's the Republican position. And that's what she's aligning herself with. So I do think around this part of the interview, Cenk and Anna start to kind of realize that they're talking to somebody who does not have a coherent political ideology, certainly doesn't really have one that they agree with. And that starts to make things a little bit awkward. And what they get to at the end here is stuff about super PACs and how much money was actually being donated that she was raising. And how her role has changed a little bit. So let me play this last clip and then I'll wrap this up.
Because there's a lot of things I disagree with them on.
Well, I agree with them basically on almost every social issue, I think, except the environment. And right now, this is also just something that I happen to be really good at and enjoy. It's just what I do. It's just very easy. I know people say that fundraising is very hard, but I happen to have a really, it's just very enjoyable. It's like a game. It's almost like gamification for me. I've been doing it for like a decade. I did it for my university before I entered politics. It's just something that I do. It's just like, it's just fun for me. I know that
I can tell you're good at it, Lindy. I can tell you're good at it. And I don't begrudge you for enjoying something that you're good at doing. I would say though that it's likely that you're feeling what you're feeling right now and being politically homeless because of how much that money has destroyed our political system and incentivized our politicians on both sides of the political aisle to basically F us day in and day out on behalf of their corporate donors. So I think there are other areas where you can fundraise and excel at it and it would actually do good. I just don't think it's helpful in the political realm, but that's just me. But
I do want to say one thing. My donors are not corporate. These are like everyday Americans in a variety of industries. They're not from corporations. And I want to say, I agree with you, but one party cannot unilaterally disarm. Both have to at the same time. So until both parties reform at the same time, until we do something about Citizens United, it doesn't make sense for one party to just say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore, you know? But yeah, both parties it's just, especially with the advent of super PACs, just been insane. I've had people give tens of millions to, PACs like Future Forward and whatnot.
So they're not wealthy.
No, they're wealthy.
Yes, but I don't mean that they're not corporate. A lot of them, they could be any, like I had someone who owns a vineyard. They're not necessarily like corporations.
So this is the last moment where I think Cenk and Anna kind of realize what they're dealing with here. And to their credit, and this is hopefully the last time I'll say that in the course of this video, that does seem to make them uncomfortable. They do seem to realize like, oh, okay, this person, we don't really have much agreement with this person at all. But there lies the issue, is that, why did you have this person on? It should not have been that hard for you to recognize that this person is bad faith. And if she's not bad faith, she's at least like something's not right. She's missing a couple pieces. I think it's a little bit of a combination of both here. And because they were trying, that what they were doing is they were reaching for some kind of understanding with this person and to try to figure out, where do we have an alliance? Where is there a cohort here that can be constructed and build power? Anna mentions how Republicans are good at building power, and that's why they accepted this person into their ranks when she was rejected by the Democratic Party. But the problem with building power with a person like this, and this is what I've been saying about Cenk's strategy of establishment versus anti-establishment, is that when you just base your argument on that, you are focusing on organizing with people who agree with you about nothing. This woman, if you take all of Anna and Cenk's positions at face value, this woman does not agree with them on any position. Any position. You could say maybe the environment. She says the environment. What does that even mean? She won't even say climate change. She just says the environment. So that's not like a strongly held principle. Sounds to me like she's probably been convinced by conservative arguments about climate change and is more focused on like, the Trump angle of like, I just want clean water, I just want clean air. I mean, if it's 2025 and you're saying I care about the environment and not I care about climate change, then yeah, 100% you've lost the plot. And the other thing she said here is she mentioned Citizens United. I thought this was really interesting. And it's another example of how like this alliance that Cenk and Anna are trying to build with people who are politically homeless is a fake alliance. And either they are going to be getting off, at the end of the day and we are going to be the ones holding the bag, or they're going to be the ones holding the bag, and somebody else is going to be getting off scot-free because of them. One way or the other, somebody's getting ripped off here. Because what she says about Citizens United, and this kind of makes sense. She said, it doesn't make sense for one party to disarm. Both parties have to do it. We have to just, until we do something about Citizens United, then this isn't going to change on either side. She's right about that. And the disarming on either side is a good metaphor for that. She's right that it's not just one side. The Democrats are not just going to stop taking millions of dollars from donors because they would instantly become a non-competitive political party overnight. Now, Bernie Sanders had an idea, a concept of a political party that was funded by small dollar donations because there are so many masses of people that would add up to enough to take on the oligarchs. But there's questions about whether that strategy would work in the context of a general election anyway. It's entirely possible that if a candidate like Bernie Sanders or Bernie Sanders himself had ever gotten to an actual national general election, he would probably have to take big dollar donations from somewhere. And what this woman says is that her donors were never corporations. They were. It could be anybody. It could be anybody across all kinds of different fields and people who work in different fields, people who own vineyards, people who own basketball teams. I mean, this is what this lady's perception of everybody is. And you see that this is the moment where Cenk and Anna realize, like, okay, there's really not much else to say with this person because she is a symptom of the corruption. She is an agent of the corruption of both parties. And you see with her a perfect example of how it works. She makes it very clear in this interview that she just likes to do this. She just likes to raise money for political parties. She likes being a political operative. And the only reason she's not with the Democrats anymore is because she was not able to single-handedly push the Democrats in a rightward direction as she saw fit. And that's aside from the fact that Democrats are already going in a rightward direction. So same thing with her and Anna. The problem is not that Democrats are so extreme left, it's that they're not right-wing enough for them. And the party has already been tacking to the right for a long time now. And the reason that there is essentially the same problem on both sides, what Cenk calls the uniparty, is because you have these donors, millionaire donors, maybe they're not corporations, but they are giving, it's the same exact thing. Citizens United says that if a corporation gives money, that's the same as a person giving money because it is Citizens United. And it essentially amounts to free speech. The amount of money that you give amounts to free speech. That goes for individual donors who give millions or billions of dollars as well. I mean, doing away with corporations giving money would not have stopped Elon Musk from buying the 2024 election. So that's a meaningless distinction that she's drawing here. In one breath, she says we have to get money out of politics. In the next breath, she says, well, my donors weren't corporate. They were just millionaires and billionaires. So that's what we're dealing with here. That is the type of person who does this left grift. You're seeing it right here. Somebody who makes the calculation that they can freely drift anywhere the political wind blows, as long as they have the ability to generate dollars for the party, they will have access to at least some of the power that party has. That's what this comes down to. And this woman would be completely irrelevant if it was not for the fact that Republicans won in 2024. And because they did, we're talking about this person who essentially, there's thousands of grifters like this woman who go back and forth between parties, and they drag the Democratic Party to the right towards all their corporate buddies, and they try to detach the Republican Party from any type of accountability or anything like that. I mean, this is the pattern of American politics. And so if Cenk and Anna are trying to contrast themselves from that by having this woman on, they are staring in the face of the the abject and almost abstract corruption that they themselves talk about all the time. And again, they were critical. They did ask this person questions, but because she's playing this, I'm politically homeless, I'm neither left nor right, I'm right in the middle. She says she agrees with Republicans on every social issue, and she's right in the middle. And Cenk and Anna just accept that because they have bought into this idea that every American is right in the middle of right and left as we see it, and Democrats are far left, and voters don't agree with that because they're so far left, and Republicans are far right, and there's right in the middle. I agree with some Republican positions, I agree with some Democratic positions. No, that is a losing political theory. It's a losing political theory because all you're doing is you're handing over all of your credibility and all your operative ability to people like this who just want to operate within the political world and slither around, making money, siphoning off whatever they can, and trying to convince people that there's some kind of underlying political principle. So I think the fact that this was a slightly uncomfortable interview for Cenk and Anna shows that they haven't quite sunk that far yet. I know some of you will disagree with me, but I think there's truth to that it's like they're genuinely trying to figure out how to take a principled stance and also keep their business going at the same time. And yet it leads them to talking to a person like this who is almost completely airheaded in her pursuit of money. She doesn't even say she likes making money. She says she likes raising money for political parties. And it doesn't even matter what the political party is. I mean, that is psychotic. That is psychopath shit. And that is the type of people that Cenk and Anna, whether they know it or not, are associating themselves with. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support. I post all kinds of exclusive content there, exclusive podcasts, beats, songs. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all that's going to be available, plus more. Plus, if there's other ideas for exclusive content that you'd like to see, let me know and we'll try some things out.